We might be in for a long winter of more buzz, speculation, and general angst among fans which front office will finally step up and lift this burden off the Sixers fans' shoulders. But if one thing is clear, it is that the Sixers president of basketball operations, Daryl Morey, is working with the phones behind the scenes pretty actively. Rumors have been popping up more frequently in the last week or so, and on a new episode of the Hoop Collective podcast on Friday, ESPN insider Brian Windhorst gave us some very intriguing info about the future of Simmons' deal. It kind of sounds like Morey is talking a lot to his buddies, all of whom are in a position to try and make moves before the February 10th trade deadline. That's pretty helpful, and it should be encouraging to the Sixers fans that front offices around the league are buzzing about Morey's talks. He's not just sitting back and waiting things out. He's trying to get things done. It's appreciated. I kind of think at this point, the concept of a 3-team deal should be familiar territory for those who traffic in Simmons rumors. The idea of sending out a player that much money and the time on his contract is never going to be easy, especially when someone like Morey is looking for a particular kind of return, a top 25 player. Windhorst bringing up Eric Gordon's recent play isn't really surprising. It kind of felt at one point like the Sixers were involved in Gordon discussions at every single trade deadline since the dawn of time. Gordon, who turns 33 in a week, is earning $1 million this year and $1 million next year while averaging 14.7 points per game and shooting a gaudy 43.4 from deep. Does Gordon fit into the top 25 type return that Morey wants? Nah, probably not. Unless he's able to get a young guy with a high ceiling who hasn't signed a big extension yet. But his salary is really not helpful in moving Simmons no matter what. And his skill set will be attractive to any team even remotely in contention. There's a lot of good players out there on these teams. De'Aaron Fox comes to mind, and Tyrese Halliburton in Sacramento, Anthony Edwards, Malik Beasley, and D'Angelo Russell on the Timberwolves. That sounds like a good option. Gordon and Jalen Green on the Rockets, who'd I imagine Morey would be thinking about either in a return to the Sixers or in a multi-team move. Now, no matter what happens, the Simmons trade is going to be an absolute mega bomb for everybody. We'll definitely have to dust off those old calculators and get them out for the size of this deal. A very viable trade offer that I talked about in a previous video was with Dame Lillard and the Portland Trailblazers. Damian came out and said that he wants to play with Ben Simmons, and Ben Simmons was not opposed to the idea. He actually kind of digged it. So, guys, let's talk about that for a little bit. Oddly enough, this really isn't the first time that these two have seemingly sent subliminal message about teaming up via social media. Back in early September, and I don't know if you guys knew this, Lillard liked a photoshopped image on Twitter of he and Simmons wearing Blazers uniforms next to each other. That's interesting. The future, sure, is entertaining, huh? At this point, while Lillard tries at every single turn to claim that the reports coming from inside the Blazers facilities aren't true, it seems pretty clear that he's a fan of playing with Simmons. As the Blazers blow up their organization and look for a new direction, this could certainly be a kickstart for a new era in Portland. I'd be completely fine with CJ McCollum, Alfred Simmons, and multiple first-round picks in exchange for Simmons. And if that's on the table, I expect President of Basketball Operations Daryl Morey will strongly consider it. The Sixers have played 23 games without Simmons this year. Now, over the last 6 months, we've heard nearly a dozen teams connected or tied to this Ben Simmons ongoing efforts to being traded. It seems teams are interested in a 25-year-old Defensive Player of the Year runner-up with sky-high athleticism. Who knew? One team that has lived more and more on the fringes than in the middle of the trade buzz is the New Orleans Pelicans, who are looking for ways to solidify their core around Zion Williamson. As they navigate Williamson's numerous injuries and his reported ambivalence to playing in New Orleans. And apparently the Pels' interest in Simmons has led to at least a little discussion between their front office and the Sixers' decision makers. Highly respected NBA insider Michael Scotto reported in a new Hoops Hype podcast Wednesday that the Pels and the Sixers had talks about a possible Simmons trade, and the discussed swap was certainly interesting. Here's what Scotto reported. Quote, I heard the Pelicans discuss trading future first-round picks and pick swaps with the 76ers for Ben Simmons. League sources told Hoops Hype, but Brandon Ingram was not involved in the talks. I'm told, as of now. End quote. All right, I'm not really sure if the Pels GM David Griffin is under the impression that Sam Hinkie is still in charge around these parts, or if he was just trolling. But centering a Simmons deal around picks and pick swaps while Joel Embiid is entering his absolute prime, that's just not getting it done, big dog. If the plan was to pair someone like Ingram with a number of picks and pick swaps, I still want more Ingram. Isn't it good enough to lift the Sixers' ceiling in a significant way? But at least it would just make sense in terms of logic. Duh. But you guys, pick swaps, I suppose if the Sixers are playing the super long game here, and as of some considered in the past, they could stock up on these picks and swaps in the Simmons exchange and hope that a player like Dame Lillard or Bradley Beal eventually becomes tradable, in which case they have a treasure trove of assets to send to Portland or to Washington. To be honest, I really don't care for that approach because it just leaves the door way too open for failure. And what if those moves never became available and you're just left holding a bunch of picks, just like the Oklahoma City Thunder, that won't turn into star caliber players until Embiid is 34 years old? Not interested at all. That's just going to be too much risk, you guys. Where Morey, the talks with New Orleans would start with Williamson and go from there. The Pelicans probably don't want to trade the face of their franchise despite all the question marks surrounding them. But you're not holding on to an asset like Simmons for this long to eventually trade him for pennies on the dollar. And then again, we are stuck, still waiting for this deal to finally, mercifully go down. The Sixers are tied for 6th in the East as of Wednesday morning. Tomorrow, we're going to be back better than ever with some more NBA trade rumors, the Ben Simmons saga, maybe a little bit of Kyrie, and you already know we're going to save y'all a seat. Peace.